A lot has happened, Kurt, in the basketball world, and I think we should just start by taking a pause and recognizing the giant that was Bill Russell. You know, in every sense of the word, his legacy was incomparable. I mean, what Commissioner Silver, I mean, Commissioner Adam Silver called him the Babe Ruth of basketball. Basketball's Babe Ruth for being able to transcend time. I don't really know much of a better compliment, like, or a better lead to that. But what do you remember about Bill Russell specifically?
Well, I think there's two things. I think that part of it is, I think, you know, we always talk about the 11 championships and everything he did on the court and all that. That may have sold some of that short a little bit, in the sense that he really did help change the way basketball was played. It was when he entered the league, if you were told as a defender, you know, stay down, stay in your position, stay in front of your man, make him shoot over you. And in comes Russell playing this above the rim, high flying, shot blocking, frankly, just more, you know, it was the way the game was being played in black communities as opposed to kind of the very white NBA at the time. And he starts to change things. He's not alone. Elgin Baylor comes in with his incredibly graceful game, right? And is playing above the rim. But it evolves the NBA really quickly. And Dr. J ends up taking it to another level with the next generation. But like, it changes the game on the court to something much more like we recognize today. And I'm not sure he gets credit for everything he did there. You know, we talk about the coaching and the championships, and him being the first black coach, and frankly, in American professional sports, wins a couple titles that way. Like, everything he did, he really just changed how the game was played on the court. And frankly, Corey, that pales in comparison to the off the court stuff.
Yeah, just to kind of harp on that for a second, to play that tune, I think that's fascinating that he kind of took basketball from a painterly game to a sculptural game in that sense, right? Yeah. 2D to 3D, like adding the vertical, you know, yeah. And like that is it's a pretty amazing innovation. And the fact that, and this is the thing that stands out to me too along those lines, is to have the vision to do that. Yeah. You know, it's one thing to have like the talent, but to have the resolve. And I think the resolve element of his championship quality, his championship character, to take not only his team, the Celtics, or, you know, San Francisco, or, you know, any of the Olympic team to gold, not only taking them all the way every single time, but being able to take the rest of us with him, you know, like take all the people who would follow in his footsteps, like Dr. J, like Michael Jordan, you know, like all the people that we see now and think this is what basketball is. John Morant is a product of all of these people, right? Like, we wouldn't have the game today without the vision that Bill Russell had at a time in which, quite like you said, no one could even conceive of basketball being played that way. Like, that's kind of like painting in new colors, you know? That's a crazy idea for me. And now it's just normal. But I think that's the job of a shepherd, and that's the job of a real consummate leader. And then, of course, you know, Kurt, you think about team basketball. Does anyone come to mind that's better than Bill Russell? A guy who's willing to do whatever role. Like, you want me to rebound? I'll rebound. I'll get 50 rebounds in a game. You know, like, one night he could be Dennis Rodman out there getting, like, you know, all these rebounds. The next night he could be playing against Wilt Chamberlain. You know, like, what? Like, the ability that he had to answer the call and then say, okay, now you want me to be a player coach? Yeah. No worries. I'll get us, you know, 2 championships out of 3 years. It's just unbelievable.
And like you said, his recognition of, like, all right, what we need is rebounding. What we need is defense on this Celtics team, because those Celtics teams were stacked with Bob Cousy and Sam Jones and Casey and on down the line of all these Hall of Famers. They had scoring. They had plenty of guys who could get buckets. Here was the guy who was going to put the anchor in and change the defense and get the boards and make them a championship team. And, he'd score plenty, but that was not the primary focus. And by the way, I love your use of the word resolve for him, and just his resolve and determination, because doesn't that really show in every aspect of his life? Like, playing through what he had to kind of endure, even in Boston, where I love Vinny Goodwill, who's on writes for Yahoo. He's on Brother from Another all the time. Had a great line where he said Boston loved Bill Russell 48 minutes at a time, which I thought was pretty much a perfect explanation for how that city handled him at the time. And to be able to do everything he did and have the resolve to play through it was is unbelievable.
And I don't know if you saw President Barack Obama's comments when he gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Like that kind of, first of all, is the highest civilian honor. Pretty amazing for your work, like you said, off the court, being able to be recognized as a trailblazer, to be there for Muhammad Ali during a time when no one else was really, being afraid perhaps to support him. Just being on the front line there. I think about Bill Russell I have so much respect for him. This is the best way I can describe the way that, the NBA family, as far as like players are concerned. Because remember, I grew up around this.
Yeah.
My dad's a Hall of Famer, so I grew up around the Hall of Famers and the legends. There's one consistent thing, and that's every single legend. I don't care who your favorite legend is. I don't care how big they are. They always say, Mr. Russell. They always go right for him and pay their respects. And that's a whole different level where like everyone in the game, being around my dad and going to all these events and all the Hall of Fame events, just the gravitas that Mr. Russell had, and just the gratitude that everyone showed him, and the massive respect. And that's what I mean by he was a giant amongst giants. Like that, to be able to command that kind of respect, but while also airing such a humility and grace, is enviable, to say the least. And we're going to miss him.
And by the way, I think one of my favorite clips things we ran at NBC that I think a lot of people saw around this time involved your dad was the 2017 Lifetime Achievement Award, when your dad and Kareem and Shaq are all out on their, honoring Bill Russell's achievements, and they hand him the trophy and he takes it, and then he looks up and down and points at each one of them and just says, I would have kicked your ass. I just loved that competitiveness at 80, whatever he was at the time. I love that fire that was still there. And you don't get to be where he was in life without a real sense of competitiveness and a real fire to be the best.
But I also think that there's this element of grace, which is because sometimes people think, okay, well, you want to win at all costs. And that's kind of like the scorched earth type of winning, and we see that sometimes, particularly in the NBA, where it doesn't matter what I do, like I'm going to get mine. And to think that that's why he was the ultimate team player, because how many players in the NBA today would say, okay, I'm willing to drop my stats. Like I don't mind if I don't make an all-star team, or I don't mind if I make that little, incentive in my contract to make another $20 million. Like I don't care about the amount of money. Like I just want to win. So if you want me to go to this, play this position or come off the bench, I don't need to start, whatever the team needs, like to that kind of mentality is like the only stat that matters is winning. And then I saw this one interview by Tim Duncan I thought was hilarious. He's like, also you have to understand it's underrated, like how much you have to hate to lose, like how much you hate losing. And I think Bill Russell also shared that, like not only do I want to win, but also I hate losing. But then to combine that with that grace of making other people feel like they belong. I remember this one clip. It's one of my favorite stories about Bill Russell, because when he was young and kind of find himself, which is kind of a crazy concept. Could you imagine a young Bill Russell trying to find himself? I felt like he always was so sure of himself. But there was a time, and apparently Mikan, like one of the ultimate legends, came up to him and said, and just started talking to him. George Mikan just started talking to him as like a peer, and said, when you get to the league, when you do this and this and this. And Bill Russell was like, that was one of the first times that made me feel like I belonged there, And then you hear like those, sit down interviews, or the way that Tim Duncan talked about Bill Russell, or the way that Kobe Bryant talked about Bill Russell, like how he then passed that on, like what George Mikan did for him. He passed it on to future Hall of Famers. I think that's what basketball is all about. And that's why he's the consummate champion.
I would agree. I don't think there's not going to be, and look, I don't think anybody's ever going to win 11 championships again, but I just don't think there's ever going to be anybody quite like him. How do you feel about the idea of retiring his jersey, his number 6, across the league in a Jackie Robinson kind of way?
That's interesting. That's a really interesting idea.
It's let's just say it's getting bounced around. I don't know what will come of it. It's way too early for the NBA to. There's a mourning period. It's way too early to discuss this in a serious way. But I know Magic Johnson supported it, and we'll see what happens, but I think that there's at least some momentum towards the idea.
Yeah, and Jackie Robinson was a great hero of Mr. Russell's. And it's just interesting to see. He was a pallbearer at Mr. Robinson's funeral as well. So that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think my gut reaction on these things is to be cautious, but I think that there's one person in NBA history who's kind of deserves that because of their transcendent impact, not only on the game but on the culture. Like, it would be Bill Russell. So.